Peace. You are tuned into Edible Activists with your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. On this show, we honor Black people and their stories in food and agriculture, celebrating legacy, traditions, contributions, and creativity that all stem from the land. So tune in and let's get started. Peace. I am your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. Today's guest is Darrelynne Strother, the creative force behind Châteaux Cocoa, a wellness-centered gardening venture rooted in healing, sustainability, and joy. What began with a tossed cucumber seed as a child has grown into a deeper mission to reconnect with the earth and nourish community. From art to agriculture, Darrelynne blends creativity, care, and purpose in every part of her journey. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today.
I know that you were out in your oasis and took some time to chat with me. Your skin is glowing. That sun does its work, but I know it was, well, we actually had a fair day today. Like the weather was actually really nice.
Mhm.
But I always appreciate my guests, especially during this time. This is a busy season for y'all. So thank you for opening up your schedule to chat with me. I really appreciate when former guests rave about other people in this space and folks think I know everyone. I'm like, I don't know everyone. I want to meet everyone. And so good friend and grower in this space, Tammy, said, you got to check out Châteaux Cocoa. And so here we are. I've been fangirling, as I always do, over all of your work on Instagram. And here we are. I'm so excited that we get to share your story out to a broader audience.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. And hooray, thanks for Tammy for raving about me. Tammy does awesome work, as you guys have seen before. So yeah, thanks again.
All right, we're going to kick off. So, the story of the cucumber, which I know isn't a linear journey into this, right? But like it's one of the things that kind of sparked, I guess, your relationship amongst other things into this space in connecting with the land. And I was laughing actually when I read it. I was so tickled because I remember my sister doing the exact same thing during COVID. And we didn't, unbeknownst to any of us, she had thrown some seeds out in the front yard. And it had to been, I don't know, a few weeks later, something started to blossom in front of my parents' yard. And we couldn't for the life of us like understand what it was. Because at the time, like they weren't growing anything in the front other than flowers. And so I talked to a neighbor and she said, maybe a bird dropped the seed. And I was like,
Mhm.
really? And I was like, okay, like that makes sense. Birds drop seeds, right? Exactly. And so my sister chuckled a few days later. She was just like, oh, I think those are cucumbers. I just tossed my seeds out there. So admiration for part of your story. And I know all of it actually. And I can't actually wait to share this with my sister because she's gonna get a laugh at it. But I just loved it. And so you shared, how that childhood, moment with cucumber seeds planted something deeper in you. And what I want to ask is how is that early connection to growing evolved into the work that you're doing now with Chateau Cocoa? And what is the meaning? And I also want to know the meaning behind the name because it's beautiful.
Yeah, so I think it was kind of like in rebellion of throwing the cucumber seeds and mainly because my mom told me no. She told me I couldn't. I was like, "Can I plant these?" And she was like, "No, I don't know what them are." And she was no. So I just threw them over the balcony. But in terms of like life, I didn't actually keep growing until after college. Where I rented a room from a roommate, and I kind of convinced her because at the time I had just started a job. I didn't have any money. I know how it is when once you come out of college and you don't have a job. But I had just started a new job, so I hadn't got paid yet or anything. And I was trying to convince her, like, hey, we need a garden. Um, and can you pay for it too? um, so I think we had like a $50 budget. So we got some soil and we got a few seeds and we planted like a pepper and a cucumber. And so I was kind of reintroduced then. But then I ended up having a health scare after that. Um, and I ended up forcibly growing basically because of my health. And I also not just growing, but also seeking out organic food or food that other people have grown that doesn't have any chemicals or pesticides or anything in it. And so that I could basically consume anything that does nothing that comes in a package, basically. And so that was my main force behind it's just mainly just getting myself healthy. Um, and the hobby kind of stayed with me. So here I am still growing. Well, the name Châteaux Cocoa comes from it's what I named the house, and it's based off of the trim. I'm gonna see if you guys can see it here in the frame, but all of the trim in the house is this dark chocolate color. I went to school at UVA for architecture and urban planning, and so it has all of its original trim, which is really hard to find in the housing market these days. It has transom windows and whatnot, so it's a very I would call it a very bougie house. And so I call Chateau Coco, and eventually there will be other things going on at the house. So right now, is phase one. There are four phases, but phase one is the garden and farm. And so that's basically what we've mostly developed. And then phase two will be our indoor classroom, which is coming. And actually, I have to clean it out for our kids' summer camp. So we're moving into phase two. And so that's where the name came from.
That is lovely. I see that on a shirt, Darrelynne. I see it on a shirt.
That may be
And actually wanted to ask, as I knew that you did, study architecture and urban planning. How do you feel like that is? I mean, it's so your oasis is a blend. Obviously, I feel like your love for art and creativity, architecture, the land that surrounds it. But when you were studying, when you were at UV, you just said the name of the college.
correct.
Um, did you did that spark any interest in the land? I know like obviously land is a large part of urban planning, but on the growing side, did that spark any interest there?
They actually don't have very much agriculture program. There is another school in Virginia, Virginia Tech, that has an ag program, but ag programs aren't, at least at the time that I was a student, they weren't big. They weren't, people, there wasn't this kind of like, let's grow our own food movement. And so there was like a garden, a community garden, but I personally didn't participate in it. And if there are architects that are watching this, they know that we didn't really have time to participate in anything else but architecture. But yeah, a lot of the things that we studied were mostly European architecture, and I had like maybe 1 or 2 days of African architecture, so nothing really based in the land that kind of piqued my interest. Yeah.
I love how it's full circle, though. I mean, I definitely have interviewed one person in particular who's an urban planner, and the way that she just blends history and, talks about heirs property and all of that. Like it all blends. And so, shout out to her. She's amazing. But I just also just love these full circle moments because even if it isn't anything like truly intentional in ag, is all connected. So, and I was just amazed by all the concentrations that you had studied as well. So to get back to the health scare that you had, how has that personal transformation shaped your approach to wellness, food, and land care?
Well, I would say it has shaped me in a way that there's certain things that I would say that I won't tolerate in terms of what I consume. And then it also leads into people too. So our relationships with the people around us as well, they're part of our diet. Whether we know it or not, they're part of our diet. So keeping positive people around me, people that speak life into not just me, but vice versa. And if I see that I'm changing who I am around specific people, then I know that I gotta go. I gotta go. I can't stay in this area because I'm changing. You're not you, but the other person may be impacting me to where I'm no longer the person that I want to be. And so once I found that out too, I kind of distanced myself from those individuals as well. And so, um, yeah, so wellness just overall, again, people, and a lot of this comes from the yoga background. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga instructor, but I don't really teach or practice, but I do use a lot of the methods that were taught in yoga in terms of how I teach the kids, and so it's enveloped in a lot of the courses that we take. If there's conflict in the class, in terms of how it's addressed, those are just different methods that may be used, which aren't typical in like a general classroom.
What were some of the first things that you introduced into your diet, once you did have your health scare? So that's one question. And I just want to go back to go girlfriend, yoga teacher, 500 hours, okay? Just took a class, knees was cracking, ain't easy, okay? But
Um,
also just being a message when we do talk about our diet, it's always food, but it's also we also need to get some other folks and their energy out of our system. So,
mhm.
message. But when you had your health scare, what were some of the things that you introduced yourself to that made you feel better and set you on
Yeah.
the path of like, you know what, this is where I need to be. I can't go back to some of the things that I, used to eat.
Well, before I was eating everything, like whatever, fried foods, um, anything that's candy. I love candy. I have this love-hate relationship with candy. But um when I did my first dietal change where I went again, anything that wasn't a patch. So farmers market, when you looked into my lunch bag, it was like an avocado, there was a knife in there, and lettuce and onion. And so everything you would need, the ingredients for a salad, but the salad wasn't made. And people were like, why did you do that? And then they would see my lunch and they're like, oh, it looks really good. So it's super fresh. I would always make it there. And so I would never prepare it in the morning and then bring it in. It was always made fresh. And that totally makes a difference in terms of you wanting to eat it come lunchtime, and instead of going for the fried foods across the street at the cafeteria. And so just making sure that, I had all the ingredients there. Tuna, which is for the most part is canned tuna, but if I could get fresh fish, I would do that. Crab, so at one point I became a pescatarian. So I started with just, okay, I'm going to eat chicken from the farmer's market and these vegetables. And then I was able to cut out all meats except for seafood. I do understand that some people can't do that, but I cut out all meats except for seafood. And then I went full on vegetarian. So this happened over the course of 2 years, I would say. And then I was vegetarian for an entire year. And then I started dating someone, and that kind of went out the window, but they also did all the cooking. So that also changed it as well. So I think, again, the people that you're around can impact not just, again, what you're eating, but, energies wise too. So, mhm.
So does that go into, with your garden and everything? Like, are you growing, obviously, aside from the avocados? I wish. I wish. Let me know. If there's anybody out here is able to grow some avocados, like, let me know. But what in your garden is like reflective of the things that you really like to not just grow, but also incorporate into your diet?
Well, I really love Swiss chard. It is something that I've always eaten and always grow. And I like it because for the most part, it takes I think it goes 2 years before it bolts. Here in Maryland, I've noticed that it's bolted sometimes when it gets warmer, and bolt means go to seed or flower and then produce seeds for those people that are unaware. But um, it for the most part, I really love Swiss chard. And it's like if you like collard greens, it's very similar. It's a little bit more earthy, but my favorite recipe for Swiss chard is really simple. You saute it down. Of course, we all wash our greens, and then we saute them down, and then I add salt and pepper and garlic, onions, and then a little bit of red wine vinaigrette on top. And so that's what, yeah, it just it's amazing. So so that's what I typically eat from the garden. And then of course, like maybe a side of like chicken that has been either baked with a side of like barbecue sauce or something like that.
Okay, so now I have to try the red wine vinegar in chard. Do you put that in any other vegetable as well?
No, it's like a kind of sweet. The thing about the chard, it has again this earthy flavor, this earthy taste, and because of that, the red wine vinaigrette takes the edge off of it. And so I ended up cooking this at a cookout with a bunch of Black people, and I didn't get none of my greens. They were so good. I was so mad, so bad. But lesson learned. I need to hide a plate.
Listen, and black folks, they be like, "Ooh, what is that? I don't want to eat that earthy stuff." And then they be the first one to eat it all
Yes.
up.
I go back to the tray, it was empty. I was like, what happened to the green?
That
Like,
sounds really good. Thank you for giving me a recipe.
no problem.
So, when I learned about your amazing work, I instantly went to Instagram, and one of the first things I saw was just being in, you know, top to bottom, your beekeeping suit. And I said, "Oh, she's into bees. Like, I really need to get the lowdown of like how, she, journeyed into to beekeeping." I'm fascinated by bees. I love raw honey, and so definitely want to spend some time unpacking, how you came into beekeeping.
Yeah. So I actually signed up for this Bokashi composting class as a part of, I think it's like the DPR in Washington, D.C. And it was a free class that they offered. And basically, composting is composting in your house, so inside, so it doesn't smell or anything like that. But there was a guy there that was in working the hives basically. And so I was like, what's he doing? I want to do that. So I couldn't even really focus on the composting. And so he asked us if we wanted to participate. And long story short, we ended up suiting up. We put on just the veil. And I guess if I knew what I knew now, I would have put on the whole outfit. But I've had a veil on and we went over there and we took pictures and video next to the hives. It was really nice. They were really calm, pretty chill, little insects. And that kind of planted the seed to becoming a full-on beekeeper. But before that, one of my supervisors at my job, I asked him to bring bees over, and he was like, "Well, who's going to take care of them?" And I was like, "Not me. I'm not gonna. No, I'm not taking care. I was like, you gotta take care of them. They live outside. I just didn't understand. But I ended up taking a class, and mainly because we wanted more tomatoes at the community garden at work, and so that's why I asked them to move the bees over. Um, but yeah, now I guess if you would ask me 10 years ago, would I be keeping bees? The answer would have been no. I don't. I don't do bugs. Like no. But here I am full suited up and I still like, I'm not going to usually go over there without a suit or a veil. I don't like getting stung. I'm not afraid of the bees themselves, but I don't like getting stung. It's not fun. Yeah.
Getting stung by a bee is not fun at all. I remember when I was a little child and I got stung underneath my armpit when I was sunbathing in the little baby pool at our apartment complex. And I remember my dad and his old school remedies. He was a smoker and he took the tobacco out of a cigarette and rubbed my armpit down.
Oh,
I guess it helped. But fun fact, like Melissa in Greek means honeybee. So
Oh,
I think I do have a
cute.
relationship with bees. I've been to Greece. I've actually did a whole like experience around beekeeping. And so Melly got love for the bees, but I totally get it. What is one, like, what fascinated you the most out of like just being able to learn about bees that somebody wouldn't know?
Um,
Because it seems so straightforward, but obviously, that's even if it kind of is, I'm sure there's other components to just like showing up and, caring for the
yeah.
hive.
Well, there's some interesting facts. So the males, their sole purpose is to mate, and typically they eat a lot of the resources. So a hive will not produce male drones until they have enough food. And so they get kicked out in the wintertime and they end up dying. So they they basically are, and then also when they do mate, their pelvis kind of explodes. So yeah, they die once they do mate. Another interesting fact is the queen, she mates with over, I believe she can mate up to 50 drones. Um, and that will be the only time that she mates. It's called a mating flight, and then she can lay up to 1,000 eggs per day. So all of these are like really interesting facts. And then my brain is like, could you imagine laying 1,000 eggs per day? Or could you imagine if your mate came home and he's missing his legs? Like, I didn't do anything today. So, all of these things, like as a human, it's hard to imagine them. But, for the insects, this is, everyday life. So,
Have you ever had, and you don't have to have an answer for this because this wasn't one of my prompt questions, y'all, but I did think about this, that there have been some articles and conversations around beekeeping, and that I think more specifically for like honeybees. And I think that's a whole like other thing that if you wanted to break down, like there are different types of bees, bumblebees, honeybees, like, I'm not the expert, y'all, but um there have been articles around like honeybees like are like not like people think that they're great for the environment. Like I believe that they're good for the environment, right? But like there's been controversy around like that they have not. Have you heard that? And like any
um,
insight at all?
I know there's like I would say there's like a silent argument about just keeping honeybees specifically. And I think the argument is that, we should also be taking care of native bees. But the thing about, native bees, a lot of them are independent bees. And so there's recommendation that you should keep bee houses for them. A lot of them live in like logs, and then they'll put this like I wouldn't say paper, but it looks like mud on the outside. And a lot of the different bees do that. A lot of the different native bees do that. And um, a lot of them will also, some of the other pollinators, so not just honeybees, but other pollinators live under leaves and things like that. So just how you take care of your yard can affect the native bees. And so a lot of basically if you are a homeowner and society says you have to mow your grass, and they also have all of these rules, so there's some outdated methods or ways of how we take care of our yard that can impact our native pollinators. um, yeah, and then I think that's the argument. People are like, we should focus on the native bees versus keeping honeybees, which are from Europe. They're from Europe. So I think that's what the argument is. But i'm I'm keeping bees. They help pollinate. And then in turn, because I'm keeping honeybees, I don't treat my yard, which helps the native bees to live. It also helps the wasps that be flying around my yard. And all the other bees and all the other creatures. I even have fireflies. I know some people are like, I haven't seen a firefly. I have fireflies in my yard, y'all. So it's like really nice. I'm like, fireflies. I'm so happy to see them. So by taking care of honeybees, most people don't necessarily treat their yard if you have honeybees, because most of the stuff that's out there is poisonous. So yeah, it ends up by default, it ends up helping the native bees. So I don't think there's an argument there to answer your question.
Thank you for breaking that down. I never really fully dived into it all. I'm just like, okay, y'all, give me some like substantial evidence, like show me, and then maybe I'll dive into it. But I appreciate your insight in breaking that down. And I'm so glad that you mentioned fireflies as someone who grew up catching them and releasing them. We did not hold them hostage, y'all. And it's like, continue to take care of the earth because they still do exist. I was actually out in Clinton like 2 weekends ago and like my friend's backyard, which is beautiful, and they have a garden. There were fireflies out there. So I love it. Nostalgia.
Yes.
Now, Darrelynne, as someone who's deeply engaged in growing and green living, how do you see your work responding to or helping others understand the climate crisis or just the environmental impacts that we're just feeling? Like I think last summer was like our hottest summer, like on record. There are obviously other environmental things happening in different areas of the world that's impacting all of us, or really just the importance of caring, for the environment through the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, I think my end goal is to like make sure that my bees live and take care of the farm and develop this. But I also understand that there's I'm not breathing just my air. The air that I'm breathing is also my neighbor's air. And the neighbor over here, it's their air too. And so I'm always cautious or aware of like for example, I know my neighbor, they spray their yard. And so I talk to the people. I say, hey, I have bees over here, so can you like not spray in this corner? And so granted it's the neighbor's yard, like who am I to go and tell them they can't spray their own yard? And so I try to make an impact in that way. And then there's like an unknown impact. I put my sign out front, I want to say that earlier this week, and I've already gotten emails where people have seen the garden and the farm grow from what it was to what it is now, 4 years ago. And they're inspired to grow their own garden or do their own garden. I think some of the educational classes that we do at the farm. So one of the repeat sessions that we've done for the past 2 years, and we'll actually have it this Saturday, is called Hive Mind Kids Beekeeping Workshop. So right now we have about 15 kids signed up. And so they'll come and they'll get to experience the hive. So they'll get to learn about bees. They kind of learn about pollinators, and they'll also plant like specific pollinator plants that can bring pollinators to your yard. And it helped the environment that way. I also try to let people know, like, I think it's 1 in every 3 bites comes from bees, some sort of bee, some native bee or a honey bee, from pollinating our food, basically. And so I think helping people understand the importance of our food and the food system is really helpful. And then not just people, but kids, because they're going to be the next generation that will be making decisions for us when we're long gone, basically. So I think that's the importance of hosting those specific workshops and just making them a little bit more, educational and fun at the same time, so that it sticks with the kids. And then I would say, lastly, I've also heard from other adults that have brought their kids to the workshop, like, hey, I didn't know this about that, or I didn't know that there were, that this many Black beekeepers, because that's the other thing. There aren't that many that people don't see Black beekeepers, and we exist, we're here. And I would say look up your local beekeeping association if you're unfamiliar. There's typically one at least in each state. Your town may even have one, depending on how involved those individuals are. And you can learn about beekeeping, take a class. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, Darrelynne, like your videos have actually inspired me to possibly come. Well, I want to come and visit Chateau Cocoa anyway, but I think I might be ready to suit up.
Okay, you're more than welcome to come. And I will say that I've had 0 stings from any of my participants, and it's because I make it so that we have no issues. So
Listen, and if I do get stung, I won't blame you. It won't be
it
you.
will be because
I,
you
I
didn't
I
follow
bring a
instructions.
I bring a calm energy, so I should be good. I should be good. No, and just to go back to the top of that, thank you for unpacking all of that. I mean, I think that's super important, especially working with youth and like listen, ingraining this into them at a very early age. Like they're going to remember that. But just as you when you started off talking just about the lawns, you could
Mhm.
have stopped there. Like that's, and of course, we can't control what people do in their lawns, but like spraying your lawns is like crazy, like that, those chemicals get into the water and it just affects like so many different parts of our ecosystem, right? Just that alone. So I thank you for lifting that up. And we're not mad at y'all want to take care of your lawns, but it does have an impact of our ecosystem when you do spray harmful chemicals and they just end up
Yeah.
in places where they should not. So thank you for sharing that. We're gonna wrap up soon, but I think also what I want to lift up too is just having taken a look at your platform, your brand. I mean, just the business part of me, I can't help but just to lift up just the way that you've been able to monetize, honestly, and to be able to. I mean, yes, this is a passion, and I think I I'm making assumption you probably do this regardless, but this also sometimes it can be challenging to figure out like how can I monetize what I love, and I just really do like that you've been able to create these really dynamic experiences from people can actually even engage in making a beehive, right? Like that's something they can do virtually or in person. I was like, and that got me thinking. I was just like, maybe I should probably do one of those and convince my mom, my parents to like keep bees at their house. Maybe.
Right. I mean, there are instances where there are local beekeepers that don't have the space, but they want to be able to keep bees. So if your mom or family is interested in that, where you don't necessarily have to take care of the bees, where a beekeeper will come and look in your space, then maybe that will work for you.
Yeah, I got to get past my dad on that one first. You know how men are. Who's this coming to my house? I get it, as I respect the owner. So, as we wrap up, I know you talked a bit about this before, and I love the traction that you've been getting with the sign out in your front yard. And it truly does help. I know someone else who actually has a beautiful, beautiful homestead and farm, at her place, and just the traffic and the people that that she's able to engage with has just been super, inspiring. And I deeply admire that because, when it's easy to toss out building community, right? But like, what does that look like? And that's definitely a form of just having people engage in the thing that you're doing and to inspire them. So when you do interact when people interact with Chateau Cocoa, whether they're planting a seed or caring for a hive, what is the biggest message that you hope that they carry with them?
Well, I would say, well, one part of it is that no question is a dumb question because I know a lot of people are just afraid to ask about plants or they're afraid to dive in because they're like, I kill all my plants. Well, I have killed plants too. That's the secret. Most of us farmer, flower people, we've killed plants. Okay. And so like don't be afraid to just try it and then you can see what grows. And I would say the second message is that there's no one way to do this work that we do. Everyone, if you ask 10 farmers or 10 beekeepers what's their secret to this, they're going to give you 10 different answers. And so your answer, once you get established, may be totally different from those first 10 people. So those are the main things is to like, find your own way in terms of growing or whatnot, and don't be afraid to ask.
I love that because I know nothing about bees, and I'm like, what type of bees we got? I know honeybees, I know native bees, but I appreciate that, and it is an area. I think it's a especially with beekeeping and gardening in general, like there's people have their methods and they have their approaches, and I respect them, all. I mean, there's no linear way to the approach or the process. And so you're absolutely right. But we want to support you. Like, where do you show up at? Where can we get your products? And do you keep chickens too? Did
I
I
do.
see that you have
I do have
eggs?
chickens. I have 9 chickens right now. Or no, 10. I have 10 chickens. And so I do sell eggs. I get about 2 dozen per week because not all of them are laying. Um, yeah. So where you can support me, I'm on Instagram at Châteaux Cocoa, and it's Chateau with an X. But I'm also at Eastern Market most Sundays. I was not there last Sunday because my car broke down, but hopefully we will have wheels. Okay. So most Sundays I'm at Eastern Market during the summertime. And then typically when the temperature gets a little bit cooler, I'm there on Saturdays. I just signed up for, I think it's called Woodmore, no, Woodridge Farmers Market. And I'll have to look up the address for that. But if you look up Woodridge Farmers Market, I'll be at that one. And then the other one is, I think, Edgemont too. So I'm at 3 different places right now, but mainly I say my main market is Eastern Market. I'm there consistently every Sunday. But I do posts with the name of the market on Wednesday. I try to get the post out by Wednesday to just what we have fresh at the market. And then I also have a website where if I'm not anywhere and you need something, you can order online. I sell a lot of the honeys online. All of our programming is available online as well.
I can't wait to get my hands on that honey and some of your other amazing products. And so y'all heard her, so y'all might have to beat me to get some eggs, okay? Because she ain't laying that many. We're gonna be patient. We're gonna be patient during the process, right?
Yeah, they usually sell out. They're the first thing to sell out. So
Oh, I bet. Oh, I bet. And some people hate to see me coming to a stand. I love it though. I absolutely love it. Darrelynne, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. This isn't the end though. This is the end of our broadcast, our time together. But I look forward to visiting your space and engaging in some of your experiences. And hopefully I can bring a few people to tag
you're
along.
more than welcome.
I think you said where they can find you out on Instagram, Chateau Coco on Instagram. Are you on Facebook or any other platforms?
I do have a Facebook page as well. If you message me, I usually get the indication or the notification. I also have a Twitter account that I haven't been tweeting on, and in Threads as well. All
Okay.
the social networks.
Mainly Instagram, y'all. Find her there. Find her there.
Instagram.
This has been incredible. I've learned so much from you. And thank you all so much for tuning in, and peace. Thank you for listening to Edible Activists. You can find today's episode on Spotify, iTunes, and Simplecast, and follow along on all social media platforms at Edible Activists for updates. Want to support this platform? You can do so by purchasing our commerce or connecting with me about media partnerships at www.edibleactivist.com. In the words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture. Peace.